Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yep.
Right, yeah.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm calling. I'm actually in the middle of a conference, but I snuck out. So hopefully the program won't end in the middle. I'll have to like move somewhere else, but I'm good for now. Anyway, and I don't know. I'm on my phone, so I'm going to rely on Rachel Capon to help me stay on the agenda. But clearly, the leaders of the committee are really the ones to lead the agenda. And I just wanted to. I'm the coach for this committee, and so I just wanted to get things started and say thank you for being part of this and laying out our initial action for the year to come. Answer a few questions. Won't answer everything in an hour, but anyway, good to have everybody here. So I can't see who all is online. Let me see. Karen's here. Yay, Mayor.
Yes. Hello.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank
right.
you.
Reelected yesterday.
Yes, thank you so much. So welcome to everyone. And my co-chair is Jim Morrill. And Jim, you had a good idea, and I did not respond to you yet because of the election. I was too distracted, but you had the idea that maybe we share, and I think your idea was even in preparation for this meeting, but I thought maybe we could do that today. So please share your idea.
Well, it's pretty simple, and Rachel could talk about it too. I was on another committee Zoom a couple days ago, and the leader of that group asked people to sort of, at the end of the hour, ask people to list 5 things. It could not be 5 things that they would like to do, or things that they think the committee should do. So maybe we could throw that out at the end of this meeting. And Rachel has been kind enough to kind of summarize all that stuff, I think, and collect it and disseminate it. So that was the idea.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do we want to do a quick introduction of everybody?
Yes, that would be wonderful. I'm Karen Alexander. Happy to be serving on this committee.
So, Karen, if you want to call on the next person, because I can't see the whole screen.
Okay.
Just
I think I can see it. Well, I'll have my co-chair, Jim Morrill, speak next.
Okay. Everybody.
And then it looks like Susan Klutz. You're muted, Susan. I think it's down at the bottom that you can unmute of the screen. Okay. Well, we'll move on then right now, and when you find it, please. Okay. Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Garvin. I'm the Executive Director of North Carolina Campus Engagement.
Okay, welcome. And then Jill.
Hi there, Jill Hopman, Chair of the Democratic Party in New Hanover County and a human rights and immigration attorney in real life.
Okay, thank you. Preston.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Preston Blakely. I currently serve as the mayor of the town of Fletcher, North Carolina, which is in the mountains of North Carolina, West North Carolina, just south of Asheville. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
And were you just re-elected too? Preston, were you just reelected too?
I was not. No, I'm not up for re-election until 2026. So we have even year. Yeah, indeed.
That's a long term. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So, and Jennifer? And
Yep. So, yeah, I kind of jumped in at the beginning, but Jennifer Roberts, I'm the coach for this committee, and we'll be doing, Bob Orr and I are, of course, the co-leads for the Carter Center work in North Carolina. We'll be doing a trust elections tour again this coming fall, all about helping people understand how the election system works. But anyway, thank you all for being here. I'm also former mayor of Charlotte, former county commissioner, and I'm doing way too much right now. Glad everybody.
yes, well, thank you for being our coach. And Stephen,
I have such a resume, it's scary to wander through because I haven't been steady, it appears, on much of anything except for selling real estate. Welcome to the mayor from Fletcher. I'm part of that little Alan Tate, Beverly Hanks team that sells real estate all around you. I live in Rutherford County now. I was in East Asheville and went back and forth to a home in Belmont where I grew up. But I've been involved on Buncombe County Board of Elections. I served there for a couple of different elections. I've been involved speaking to the mayor, Sue Myrick. I was involved with Sue when she first ran for then Senate and then Congress. And I've been involved throughout Western North Carolina in politics, real estate, and my one claim to fame, as small as it is the wonderful town of Chimney Rock Village did not want to be annexed by the town of Lake Lure. I was young and dumb and just full of vim and vinegar, and I got them incorporated and created a town, and I still manage them to this day. So anyway, that's kind of a rambling history. Very honored to be able to participate in this and looking with a bit of anticipation at how these discussions will go.
and thank you. Jennifer, could you sort of summarize what your expectations are for this first meeting? I know when you and I spoke on the phone, it was really to talk about the next meetings and what we hope to accomplish. So if you don't mind, that'd be great for our committee.
Sure, no problem. Well, the first thing was introductions. And we do want to maybe establish the first 2024 meeting, in January. Maybe if people have a sense of what day of the week is good for everybody. Rachel can also send out a doodle poll and try to collect information from everybody to see, if Mondays work better or Fridays, if afternoons or evenings or mornings, and kind of try to get the most people available at the most times. Another thing to do is to break down this issue into some smaller components. Some of the aspects of early voting that, that are part of, and I think I sent like 8 different kind of subtopics. You all can have a discussion about, who, are there more things to include besides those 8? And if there are particular ones people have expertise with. We also have some academics, of course, on the steering committee who can help with any academic research, any recent reports of best practices in this area. Where do you want to get information? Might be a good idea to do some reading before the January meeting. Over the holidays when you have all that time, when you're digesting all that good food. To get everybody up to speed, and also of course the statutes today that govern early voting that are part of General Statute 163. So those are the main things. Rachel, did I leave anything out? Rachel's the one who's got the agenda, the draft agenda pulled up. So Rachel, anything I left out?
No, so you didn't leave anything out. I am dropping the topics the potential topics to be researched in the chat for everyone to review if we want to kind of talk about these issues further. The first one is early voting a best practice, ideal numbers of days and locations, who decides number of days and locations, notifying voters of sites and times for early voting, ways to accommodate all voters, disabled, elderly, etc. And then what about weekend voting, funding issues? And then if any of you all have some other ideas to brainstorm, we would love to hear the different topics that you think would be important to discuss.
So do
Maybe
you
you could-
want us,
Chat. You want to put those topics in the chat, Rachel?
Yeah, I just dropped them in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I just want to say that the National Conference of State Legislatures has a really good chart on its website that shows early voting laws and in all the states, in every state. You know, it talks about how many days of early voting there are in each state, what the rules are, whether they have weekend voting and things like that. And that might be something to share with people, because if you're looking for best practices, it's probably being done in some other state, if not here.
Say that
So-
again. Where was that? Where can we find that?
That's on the website for the National Conference of State Legislatures. I can send a link to Rachel,
That would be great.
and she could
That was awesome.
disseminate it to people. It might not be that easy to find, but
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sending that to me, I can, at the end of this meeting, I'll put together like the meeting notes and everything and disseminate it to you all. So that would be great if I could have that link.
so right now in North Carolina, I think that the decisions about the early voting dates and times and whether how many weekends or how many days are done by the local boards of election. Is that something that we have any control over, or is that mandated from the legislatures in terms of what are the limits that they can work within? I know hours are different in Rowan County than what I saw in the times in Charlotte, for instance.
I think the county boards can can determine their own hours and the number of locations. One potential fly in the ointment, I think, was contained in a bill. I think it was 749 in the legislature this year, Senate Bill 749, that would change the way election boards are made up. And instead of having 5 people on a local election board, it would have 4. And so if there's a deadlock, that could affect the number of early voting sites. So that might be something to look at too. Right now, I think Governor Cooper has taken them to court over that. So it may be a moot point for the time being.
So in the agenda, it's also asking ideal number of days and the ideal number of locations. Is that something that is being expected of us to decide among ourselves what that is and codify that in some way to be shared?
So the idea, sorry, I had to change venues.
Okay.
The idea is that first of all, you know, how does North Carolina do it now? And Jim is right. There's if 749 goes through, that will change. So how does it do it now? And what would be an ideal way? Looking at what other states do, who should decide? Is it a good idea to have every single county have different times and dates? You know, would it be good to have it uniform? You know, what's the best practice? And we don't have any preconceived idea of what that best practice is. I know other states have looked at it. There have been studies done, but you know, is it good for the Board of Elections to be making that decision? I know Mecklenburg got in trouble this year because it took a longer time to get the early voting sites. You have to get you know, rent, or you have to reserve those spaces, and you have to get, you know, organizations to agree to use their space, etc. That can take some time in a big county. But you know, what is the best way to do that? And should they be schools? Should they be churches? You know, or houses of worship? Should they be, you know, rec centers, private businesses? You know, kind of who's included and who's not. I mean, those are all questions. You know, and who makes the decisions, and how do you make sure the public has input? I would say that those are some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head.
Just chiming in on this as well. Jim had sent me the link to the website for the Council of State Government, or National Conference of State Legislatures, sorry. And that looks like it's going to be an excellent resource because it really breaks down when early voting begins, when early voting ends, the different locations that are approved, the hours and days, and then it also cites the statutes. And it's got that for all of the states. And so I think that that's going to be a really cool just resource for us to kind of analyze and break down and kind of see what's working in some of our neighboring states and just kind of countrywide, just seeing what is working best and kind of what their practices are to kind of give us an opportunity to reflect on our own practices. And I dropped the link for that in the chat as well.
One more issue that is part of early voting is the same-day registration. And Rachel, I can't remember if another committee is covering that or if that's under early voting. We're not doing mail-in ballots, even though that is technically voting early. But that's another committee. But is anybody else covering same-day registration, which happens during early voting?
Yeah, so that is under voter access and registration, but we also have that under early voting as well.
Yeah, and so there may be some topics that fall under two committees, and that's fine, because you'll each be driven by the questions that you have and the research you're doing, and there may be different concepts that come out of having two committees look at it.
So one of the other items on the list was ways to accommodate all voters, disabled, elderly, and etc. So, and I haven't read the document that Jim also sent me that link, but I'm sure that they would cover all of that, and really those kind of things would also be a part of the North Carolina Building Code that would require that your sites would be handicap accessible, and accessible for all voters.
Yeah, I think though, this would refer specifically to curbside voting, and also other disabilities, hearing and sight. But of course, that would be somebody assisting a voter, and that is covered in the statute. But the curbside voting is something that each polling site has to establish, and there are regulations around how you do that. I've seen it work different ways, but that will be something again to look at. What's the best practice? I find there's still a lot of people who have no idea that even exists. People who are mobility challenged who are like, well, I can't go vote because I can't get out of my car or whatever, and they don't know about curbside voting.
Yeah. I'm really proud to say that ours has been doing that for a number of years, really even pre-COVID. So it's pretty exciting for a small community such as ours. And that's at our Board of Election, the main site, to accommodate all of those. And then the next one is, what about weekend voting? And I think that's part of the early voting. This time they did limit hours to only one weekend, which included Saturday and Sunday, but they eliminated one of the weekends.
And that's a good question. Again, best practice. What about Sunday? A lot of people are opposed to Sunday voting, but a lot of people are very supportive of Sunday voting. More people are off work, etc. So it's a good issue to examine.
And then funding issues. So right now it's funded by the state, I believe.
Every county.
Does it? Okay. And then the last one is other. Anything else that the group feels strongly about that needs to be addressed? Has anyone seen anything this voting cycle that has brought concerns?
You know, there's another group working on civic education. But you know, in terms of early voting awareness of sites and all that, that's an issue. And one more thing I thought about for accessibility is other languages. You know, notice in other languages that your residents might speak.
I was going to say, yeah, the notice part, that's what we heard the most this cycle because precincts changed and polling sites changed. So if we had any complaints and it was a pretty smooth election overall, it was that people did not know their polling site had changed.
We did have some questions on that here locally as well, because some people's location changed. The only other thing that I heard, and it wasn't specific to early voting, but that the provisional ballots, there were questions about what some people were told about whether or not they should go ahead and do a provisional, or some. I heard from our Mayor Pro Tem, who apparently one of the people that was working in her campaign heard them say that it didn't matter. Don't vote. I mean, don't do a provisional, that it wouldn't matter. So I think they have that documented, and they're going to go to the Board of Elections and, you know, turn that information in.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of questions about voter ID. And again, that's something that, you know, the voter access folks are looking at. But if this committee wants to also look at that, because it is part of early voting, you're welcome to do that. If you want to look at, again, best practices for identifying voters. The difference in early voting versus say day of election is that they've got to pull your correct ballot up, you know, in the machinery, because you're voting at a site that's not where your residence is. So, you know, there may be concerns with that, or there may be process around that you want to look at.
And Jim, you're on mute.
I have a question for Jennifer, and that is all the things that we're doing about best practices and all that, is that report designed for after the 2024 elections? I mean,
So
to go into practice after this election.
One of the great points that was made during our initial October 9th meeting of the commission was that the goal is to have findings and recommendations, if there are any, by either December 2024 or January 2025 if we need extra time. However, since we are exploring, you know, what exists now and best practices, and there is a big election in 2024, we should also figure out a mechanism to help citizens be aware of the current process, so that they can, so some of the things we're, you know, discovering about things people are confused by or don't understand, we should be doing media reports, Mr. Journalist, but also helping disseminate information so that people understand the process now. That can be part of what this commission does. And I do hope that folks who are on committees are gonna, you know, find ways to, we need to find a way to have public input in what we're doing, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether there are numerous in-person things, that's up to this committee to decide. But I hope that part of that is going to be sharing as things are learned, et cetera, sharing that with the public, because public engagement is really important.
Seems like it'd be a good idea to ask some county election directors, like Michael Dickerson here in Mecklenburg County, what they would like to see happen, whether they would like better advertisement, whether people don't know where the early voting sites are, more voter outreach, or, what problems they see in the whole early voting process.
That is a great point, and we can certainly, Karen Brinson Bell is, of course, currently the state director, and all the 100 county election directors report to her, and she has monthly meetings with them. And so absolutely, if this committee wants to come up with a survey of questions you want to ask election directors, that'd be great. And we can help that with her, we can help disseminate that.
Should we extend that to a survey to the general public? And have it sent out, either through a town hall process?
So again, you all decide if you want to do something in person, Zoom, several, one, whatever. But I know that Rachel is also able to put things on our website. We do have an election commission website. And for those who are computer, have good computer access, we do like a Google form, Rachel, and people can submit their feelings, concerns that way. And we can collect that and look at that data. And the committee needs to figure out the best way to get that information out to people. Do you want to partner with the League of Women Voters? They send it to their list. Do you want to partner with, whatever groups, the county commission, people send it out to their list to get input. So it's really, the sky's the limit. You all figure out the best way that you want to get that public input.
So I see that Stephen has his hand up. Stephen?
Yeah, I kind of am the one that touched on the question about, we're going to see the election of 2024. We're going to be in the latter stages of the initial plans for this commission. So my thought is, and I'm sorry if I'm rolling it back, but I would see 3 steps, and we're not really tasked with this, but I'm not so sure that we couldn't make some suggestions to our educational committee that, we know what we think the current rules are in play are for 2024. And it seems that, every suggested possible effort be tabulated, put together, proposed in such a way as that we help get the word out of how the election, where the election, when the vote is, where you can vote, ID that's required, whatever we feel needs to kind of be put out there as best we can before the primaries, and then see what kind of results that may have had, what confusions there may have been with the election process through the primaries. And then in time for the general election, sometime after, I would say, any runoff elections, this commission would work with other groups to come up with a good game plan for making sure that the world knows what, when, where, and how to vote coming into the fall. And then the third position that I was speaking of is, I really think that in December and maybe more like January, when the smoke clears, is that there really does need to be a discussion of a reevaluation of what the entire commission has kind of come up with, or suggestions, and see if they apply or they don't apply any longer, or we need to refine, and then we can determine at that point what we want to do in 2024. Could even extend throughout the entire 2025 year to make sure that we've taken a look at everything, including what actually occurs with the current rules and laws as they would have applied on what's going to be a huge general election. Just my rambling viewpoint.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, the good news is that Jim Morrill is on that committee. So Jim can be the bridge between the civic education group and this group.
As is Leslie. She's also on there as well. So those two, they can collaborate together.
That's great. So is there any other concerns or suggestions that we need to write down?
I had one question as some data that I think would be interesting to look at, and that is, what is the cost of early voting by day? How much is it costing the state of North Carolina by day for 100 counties? And it would also be interesting to look at that same breakdown and how those costs break down between our various tiered cities and municipalities or counties, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, based on their economic viability. I think it would be very interesting to look and have some access to that kind of information to get an idea of how much it's costing us per day for each day of early voting, and the impact it has on the less economically developed communities versus the greater. Just an idea for data.
I could go in the survey to the election directors. Absolutely. And we had an interesting discussion at one of our town halls between two board members of, I think it was the Cumberland County Board of Elections, where the Democrats said, I'd love to have early voting sites in every neighborhood to have access increase. And the Republicans said, yes, but we can't afford that. And, absolutely, there's a balance there somewhere. And that's, another good issue to bring up.
So
I noticed, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jim. I was going to say, along those same lines of data, there's a national narrative that college students use early voting more than regular voting. And I would love if we could unpack that in North Carolina and see if that is true. And then the next layer of that is whether or not the new ID expectations, where there's certain sorts of IDs that are accepted and not, and only about 50 schools actually of the 114 got their ID actually approved, and see if there's any impact on youth voting. So I don't know how we could do that, but I really think if that is true in North Carolina, it's an issue that we need to address.
I was just going to say, as far as the cost and the number of early voting sites, on that chart about what other states are doing from the Conference of State Legislatures, it shows that the number of early voting sites in some states is determined by statute based on the population. For example, for every 50,000 people, they need so many sites. So that might be something to look at.
Because in Rowan County, we only have one, and it's at the Board of Elections because, we have a county that's actually 149,000, but the municipalities are much smaller in numbers. Probably all of them put together wouldn't be more than 50,000.
In terms of the research about students, we are going to have some graduate students working with the commission, and so we can pass along those kind of interests and requests to the universities that are involved. So if you have other ideas about research, let us know.
A couple of people have brought up voter ID. I'm curious if the voter ID exception form is working well, or if it's still preventing people from voting. I haven't heard much talk about that yet.
Well, our Board of elections here actually provided opportunity for free identification, making them at the Board of Election for free, all during and before the early voting, all summer. So Leslie, why do you have any insight as to why there were only 50 educational institutions that actually went for the ID for their students?
Well, some of it was the timeline. So my network has 38 campuses. And so I actually had General Counsel from the Board of Elections, Lindsay Wakely, do a webinar for my folks. But a lot of other campuses weren't aware of the process. There was like a month and a half turnaround before school started to do it. There's a second round currently to get them approved for the primary. And so again, it's an educational opportunity, for the Civic Education Committee or someone else to let campuses know that they've got to get them approved in order for them to be allowed. And I think it could be capacity, because I'll tell you, it was primarily community colleges who did not apply, right? And so I would imagine it's hard to figure out, well, whose house or, who does that live with? Such a choice or a process. So
Thank you. Jim, did you have anything that you felt like we needed to do?
No, I think the only other thing was what Jennifer wanted was to try to set a date in January. And maybe the thing to do is, get with Rachel's help, ask people on the committee, what's a good time for them to, what's a good time for people to get together again in late January, whatever, and maybe a good time of the day. We could also ask what people would like to do, in terms of these these topics, if anybody wants to work on anything special.
So does it sounded like last time that everybody sort of liked Thursday. Is that a good day for people? And because we could try to look for some times in January that are on Thursdays, and that would help narrow the doodle poll for when Rachel sends that out. That's kind of what we did this time, was talk and see what worked for maybe morning or afternoon on Thursday. And it looked like everybody preferred afternoon on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So if you like Thursdays, that might be a starting point. And if the time 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock works, we could go ahead and start with that. And I'll look at my calendar, and probably the other mayor would need to look, because we do have set things that we have to do on certain days depending on when our council meetings are. So and if any of the others have other committees that that's a conflict with, if you can let us know, we'll try to work around so that we can get the most of us here. But we can start with Thursdays if you want, and then we'll just see how that goes. And we appreciate the feedback. And everybody was very quick on the feedback last time, so that was very helpful.
Yeah, so if Thursdays work great for you all, I can send a doodle poll out just with like the 4 Thursdays in January. And then kind of if afternoons work better for everyone, we could stick to just the same block of time of 2 to 3. And you all can decide with that. And I know Jim had mentioned potentially sending out just like the same form that I sent out for the Committee on Civic Education, just with some different questions. And I don't know if you guys want me to do that as well. We can kind of brainstorm some questions that you think would be useful going into the next meeting as well. But happy to do that. Just let me know what works for you all.
So do you all feel comfortable today identifying what of the list that we have started so far that you would like to work on or do research on, or do you have contacts in that realm that would be helpful? Because we can kind of parcel out some things today if you want to, or we can have you get back to us. Like, for instance, I was going to ask Leslie if she would be comfortable doing something around the educational area. You know what?
Yes, I definitely have interest.
Okay, that would be helpful. And anybody else who has a certain passion.
I could look at best practices and talk to or check that out.
Okay. And if you don't know today, what you might do is copy Rachel, myself, and Jim, just because we'll be in contact with each other and we can share. If you all think of anything else. So you have anything else, Jennifer, that you would like us to do today?
No, I think you've uncovered some good topics, and it does sound like some of the civic education and voter ID issues are going to be part of this committee too, which is fine and great. And I will also check in with the 3 professors we have working with us to see if any of them have done presentations on early voting or have looked into it in other states. If you want, a professorial overview at the next meeting, for 15 minutes or whatever, so I can check with them. But certainly, Rachel will be in touch. We're also working on a form that kind of shows you what that final report was going to need to include, so that you have a sense of what you're working toward. We haven't finalized that yet, but we will very soon, just to give you that kind of end goal. And then also think about along the way, if there are things that we can do to help let people know what the current rules are in place. As you know, our counties have no advertising budget. Our state board of elections has no advertising budget. They put stuff on the website, but they rely on other folks to help disseminate that. And we do have a primary March the 5th, which is going to be a big one. So the time is of the essence, as they say. But I think it's been a great meeting, and glad to see everybody participating. And we are recording all this, so those who weren't able to make it today can hear what we talked about. And we will have your own section for this committee on the website, so that documents, research, recordings of meetings, and all that will be easily accessible. You'll be able to find that in one place. And Rachel is taking care of all that. Rachel, anything else?
I just have one other question. Since really all of this is going to lead back to the legislators in terms of what they're willing to do, is there a way that we can also include advocacy in this process? Because if we don't get their buy-in, I don't think we'll get the changes that we might want. So when do we, I think we have to think about that right now, so that we're preparing the information in a way that it'll be easy to disseminate. to our representatives.
No, that's a really good point. And I know that all the Mecklenburg delegation knows of this commission and what we're doing. We have not made a formal presentation to the General Assembly as a whole. Again, many individual members know, but we're exploring the best way to do that. And we are also very adamant. This is a cross-partisan network of folks engaged with elections at different levels in very diverse ways, representing the state of North Carolina. We do not have any preconceived notion of what the recommendations will be. There's no ulterior motive or design. So we're really focusing on a good government best practices report. And if you have good ideas about the best way to present this to the General Assembly, let us know. Maybe we do a report to a commission or so to one of their committees, sorry, before we think about that. But absolutely, who do we get the report in front of at the end, and how are all good things to be thinking about. So we have not finalized that path yet, but are always open to ideas. This is a true community-led commission, and we really are hoping to engage all of you and all the other folks to make this the best outcome possible.
Yeah, and we could think about organizing the topics into sections that would be easily shared with the educational community, for instance, the Board of Election and the reps, I guess, in terms of who's going to ultimately make the decision about our recommendations. Okay, so does anybody else have anything else to share or any other questions? Well, thank you so much for participating today, and we appreciate all your input. So I
Yeah,
guess
thanks for spending the time today. And yeah, just watch your emails. A lot of them will come from Rachel, but they might come from me or Karen or Jim. And we do hope that this will be a good, inclusive process. And as Karen said, we do hope that the right people will listen to it when it's done.
hey, thank you so much.
Thank you,
So I
Mayor.
guess we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you all.